let you take a break. What I'm going to do is open this discussion now for you. As always, you will be given the opportunity to ask questions. If you want to make a comment, please, very brief comments, no speeches, because we have panel of experts, and as you can see, because of the hurt and the pain, this is not a story being told by somebody else. This is real lives that are affected. And therefore it's very important that we are sensitive and sensible about this. So if you want to raise your hands, and then we will, I will take these two questions and those two questions first, and then I'll come back to you in the next round. So let's take four, okay, let me just take these two questions and those, and then I'll come back to you because you did it late. So, sir.
Well, my name is Real Tahir from French Country. I'm very moved by the account, and I really welcome the opportunity of this conference. But nobody can endorse the human rights violation. The objective of this conference, we would like to put a stop, a permanent stop. And I don't honestly believe, single out Libya, as Oliver Mal has stated quite categorically, the same violation exists in every single Arab world. The Zionist entity has been violated with impunity for the past 60 years. Iraq, since the invasion, has been violated on mass scale. What is my question, what I require the outreach to address, is that main core of this problem is the United Nations. The main permanent members of the Security Council are the main violator. Unless we can have democracy in the United Nations and move the power of the Security Council into the General Assembly, we will continue discussing the same violation and the same problem this young gentleman has faced for years to come.
Thank you, sir.
You have to reach that.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, sir.
Yes, Libya published, I think about 18 years ago or 20 years ago, they published something called the Great Green Charter for Human Rights in the age of the masses, which looked a bit like a cut and paste job from all the other conventions that they've read, and they put some Grinja Maharia to it. But actually, it was quite a reasonable document. And I think people, when they're talking with the Libyan government, they should actually say, well, look, guys, you've put out this charter. This is your charter. Now, what are you doing about enforcing it?
Thank you. Sir?
My question is, I'm Samir Nassif, I'm a journalist. From what I heard from Tom, it seems that Saif al-Islam is trying to change things. So, and I know also that some of his brothers are different from him and so on. So I would like to ask Sir Oliver Miles, knowing about the internal matters in Libya, does he think that if the West presses on human rights issues, as Tom suggested, that we will be helping Saif al-Islam to have more say and eventually to put aside the other elements of the old regime, and in what manner, if you agree with what I'm saying, this has to be done to sort of strengthen.
Thank you, sir. The gentleman next to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Human Rights Watch.
Introduce yourself.
Sorry, my name is Hugh Miles. I'm a journalist. I'd like to ask Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International representatives when they first heard the news of the Abu Salim massacre.
Okay, thank you. So if I can come to you, Sir Oliver, first, and then I'll come to Amnesty. And
first of all, can I just say that I'm not Sir Oliver, I'm Mr.
Oliver.
The Jewish Chronicle always calls me Sir Oliver.
And I put it in the way.
Well, I think there are two parts to this question about Saif al-Islam. First of all, I'd like to comment on what Tom said about the need for pressure to be maintained through governments on human rights issues. I entirely agree. I don't really agree that this is something that will come as a change or a difficulty or something unexpected to diplomats and governments, because we've been doing it for years. I don't think, as far as I remember from my own time of service, I've been retired for some while now, nobody's afraid of putting human rights onto the agenda. The difficulty is to find the leverage to get the result that you want. And that's particularly the case with a country like Libya, which is rich, which is a desirable market for the whole world, not just for us, and which is not actually asking us for anything very much. I was struck, I may say so, by the debate recently, or wasn't a full debate, questions, exchanges in the House of Lords about mainly I think it was related to the Hisham Mata case, where a number of your colleagues seem to be under the impression that Libya is desperately keen to have an agreement with the European Union. I don't think there's any evidence of that at all. I don't think they're particularly interested in whether they have an agreement with the European Union or not. The European Union would like to have an agreement with Libya. That doesn't give you any leverage for making the human rights case. It doesn't mean you stop making the human rights case. Of course you should make it. The other part of the implication was that the way to get reform on human rights issues in Libya is to back Saiful Islam. I'm not entirely convinced of that myself, but let's, for the moment, assume that there's the best hope that we've got, so to speak. I would just like to mention one rather important, I think, development which nobody's mentioned in the introductory speech. Well, it's not directly perhaps a human rights issue, it has very important human rights implications, and that is the deal which has been struck with the members of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, who were the main Islamist extremist organization in Libya. Many of them were Afghans, so-called people who'd fought in Afghanistan against the Russians, to come back to Libya. They were large numbers of them, I don't know the exact number, but it certainly was hundreds, were held in prison in Libya, and thanks to the efforts of Saiful Islam and his foundation, a deal was struck by which these people have apparently renounced violence and been released, and they've signed up to a major Islamic document. They've reached agreement with the Muslim authorities in Libya on the inadmissibility of force as preached by Al-Qaeda and other similar organizations. One has one's doubts about whether this deal is everything that it seems. It may not be. It was suggested, for example, by CNN, that if it really was, as I described it, it was an important blow struck against not just the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, but against Al-Qaeda and like-minded organizations throughout the Muslim world. I'm very doubtful whether that's the case. It's very unusual, actually, for anything that happens in Libya to have much impact on the rest of the Islamic and Muslim world.
Well, thank you.
We shall see.
Thank you, Tom.
Just to comment on that point that Oliver Miles made about the leverage on Libya and the role of the West in using leverage to improve human rights situations around the world. I mean, it's a very tricky issue, and it's becoming trickier with vital interests and counter-terrorism, energy, security, and so forth, looming large in diplomatic considerations. Let me just mention an example from China, where obviously the UK has very, very little leverage. The other day, a seriously mentally sick man, a British citizen, was executed in China. It was the Chinese who cancelled the human rights dialogue between the UK and China as a result of that little diplomatic difference, not the British. The British should have been there, right there, saying, we're cancelling our dialogue with you on human rights because of what you've done. It was the Chinese who did it, because of some statement that some minister made. I think that, first of all, I think that often the European Union underestimates the extent of the leverage it has, underestimates the importance of diplomatic recognition, underestimates the importance of certain kinds of agreement that confer not only economic benefits but also diplomatic benefits. But I also think that diplomats often use the argument that they don't have any leverage as an excuse not to do anything. And I certainly don't think that it's the case that the UK or many other European governments or the US put enough leverage on some of their very abusive allies in the Middle East, whether it's Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Israel or the Palestinian Authority or any of those others. But I agree, it's a very difficult issue, and the UK and other Western governments don't have much leverage, and that's something that we struggle with the whole time. Nonetheless, we push them. On Abu Salim, I don't know because it's a long time ago. I was working at the BBC World Service in the African Service. We covered Libya at that time, and I remember the news trickling out